Hello everyone, you are watching The Chrissy B Show and I'm your host Chrissy B, and our aim on this program is to help you look after your mental health and well-being. Now, having a baby is meant to be a joyous occasion and everyone expects new mums and dads to be over the moon and looking forward to the future with their new family. But what if you actually felt like leaving your toddler somewhere and driving off, or even throwing your baby in the nearest swimming pool? What if instead of feeling happy, you actually felt depressed? And what if you felt so stressed and down that you would start biting yourself? These are just some of the dark thoughts and events that have happened to real people who we're actually featuring on today's program. Now, they're being very open about what they've been through to help other parents out there going through postnatal depression. Now, before I let you know about my guest today, here's an Audrey Tang video explaining the condition of postnatal depression.
Hi Chrissy, thank you very much for having me. What an interesting topic again. Perinatal depression is the all-encompassing term for postnatal depression and prenatal depression, or also known as postpartum depression as well, depression after the birth. And this can be an episode, major or minor, of depression within 12 months or so after a woman gives birth. Now, this can affect fathers too, and that's known as paternal postnatal depression, PPND. The whole trouble with depression is that sometimes the symptoms go unreported because people think, well, actually, I'm naturally not going to be sleeping very much because my baby's crying, or I'm not able to eat as much because I'm not feeling quite right, probably because I haven't had enough sleep, or maybe there were some complications of the birth that you're recovering from as well. However, if you do find that you are struggling and that you're tearful, that you're withdrawing from society, that you're not, that something isn't right, you absolutely must say something. In a recent study, less than 20% of women who were diagnosed with postnatal depression had reported their symptoms to their midwife or their obstetrician. So it's really, really important. Please say something. It's the same thing for fathers too. Fathers may think you've got to cope, you've got to support your partner, you've got to be the strong one. But the thing is, if you've also been supporting them through the pregnancy, through the birth, you too are probably feeling very exhausted, very tired. And the difficulty is, if the mother is down and low, this can impact on the father's mood as well. And before you know it, you can get into a very vicious cycle of sadness, moodiness, depression. None of that is good for you, and certainly none of that is good for your baby either. So it's very important to seek help. Now, I'm not just saying seek help if you're feeling down, feeling low, but also if you're feeling anxious, because anxiety is a very strong component in pre and postnatal depression. It's understandable because obviously, especially it's your first baby, you're worried, is my baby feeding properly, how's my baby feeling, and so on. But it's very important to seek help. Seek help not only for any mood disorders, but seek help practically as well. Don't be afraid of reaching out to other people. Not only will you feel less alone, but you may find some really helpful tips from other mothers or fathers who are going through something very similar, who may be able to give you something practical to do as well. There's no one singular cause of the predisposition to suffer from depression. It has been noted in studies that a woman who has had postnatal depression before is more likely to suffer it again. But similarly, if a partner has supported a mother through a postnatal depression, they may well also feel the same things because the brain sort of remembers that trigger from the last time. Also, as with any form of depression, there may be a genetic predisposition. Certainly, it has been found that the hippocampus is smaller in people who suffer from depression. Now, there's no real explanation as to why yet, but there is a theory that the stress hormone, as I said, anxiety can cause, or is a big factor in depression. The stress hormone cortisol is more evident in people suffering from depression, and that, according to some studies, has an effect on shrinking the hippocampus. That could be related there. Other things that can contribute is, of course, family trauma, or actually, in fact, having a baby being quite a stressful event in itself. It's certainly a big life change. And if you're undergoing other life changes at the same time, perhaps you're moving house because you're getting a bigger house, which is on its own very exciting. You may even be getting married, again, on its own very exciting, or changing jobs. All of that together with having a new baby can cause a lot of changes and a lot of things happening to you physically, which can also contribute to depression.
So we'll be hearing more from Audrey a bit later on. So let me tell you about my guests. I have Mark Williams, who had to leave work to look after his wife who developed postnatal depression. But unfortunately, he also developed the same condition and even felt suicidal. But Mark has now set up an organisation that specifically helps fathers with postnatal depression and anxiety. Now, this condition is, of course, a worldwide one, and we will be seeing a US support group where the mothers are very open about the kind of dark thoughts and feelings they battled with. And we also look back at an interview with Charlotte Antoniou, who felt so down after the birth of her baby that she started to self-harm. But before we get into the more serious stuff, let's see what parenting and family coach Sharon Lawton has to say about how fathers can look after themselves and how to prepare to make things less stressful. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Hi, Chris.
Lovely having you back.
Thank you.
So tell us, we are going to be speaking about the more serious stuff, post-natal depression, a bit later on. But tell us about, first of all, stress, the kind of stress that new fathers go through.
I think from my observations actually sort of around this, the clue starts very much in the title of maternity and baby services. So there's that sort of subliminal message straight away that fathers are sort of excluded right from the start, and we see things like mother and baby units. So, you know, there's that sort of implicit message is that it's all about mum and not really sort of about dad. And of course lots of literature is aimed at mum and baby, and you know, obviously there are organisations and there are sort of leaflets and information out there for fathers, but I think you have to be quite proactive in trying to find them. They're not sort of there easily.
Readily available. Like,
absolutely. Yeah. Having said that, I think where the stress is concerned, I think where dads and new dads are concerned is when a mother gives birth to a baby, there is that first sort of rush of hormones. And those hormones, of course, are there for a reason. They help us to repair and help us to bond with the baby and sort of help us a little bit to forget as much as you can the sort of the pain of what you've sort of gone through with a childbirth is concerned. Now, fathers don't get that rush of hormones right from the start. So to me, I think that's sort of quite key, you know, so that can make a big difference. And also sometimes for some fathers, just being involved in the birth and sort of seeing a traumatic birth, experiencing a traumatic birth, or just experiencing their wife having a baby and maybe feeling out of control and that sort of overwhelming feeling of maybe not being able to help their partner sort of in that, all can make a huge difference to how they may sort of cope with the stress. Yeah, and I'm sorry, just going to add, coupled with that, then sort of after the baby's born, maybe feelings of overwhelming sense of responsibility, if that hasn't been sort of spoken about, the demandingness of a baby, so that tiredness, that, you know, that nobody's getting much sleep because baby's crying and obviously needs to be fed. And then, of course, you know, all of the demands on mother's time of the baby, and also lack of sex and all of those things, you know, the relationship between, you know, the partners, the mum and the dad changes hugely. So, you know, I think it's very difficult for fathers actually if that's not being explained and prepared.
What do you think dads can do maybe beforehand to prep themselves? Maybe if they haven't sort of heard the basic stuff that's out there for them, well, what could they do? I think my sort of recommendations or top tips would be to get involved as much as you can, sort of as early as you can. So make sure that you go along to, or they go along to parent
craft classes if they can. Obviously that's towards the end of the pregnancy, to make sure they know that they're able to take paternity leave and take it. And
many don't.
And many don't, absolutely. And that's so important to be there in those early couple of weeks, early few days, to find out exactly what's happening to their partners and how things will change. Be proactive about finding stuff out. Speak to other fathers. Speak to other fathers who are new fathers to find out, sort of how it was for them. Go to your local children's centre and attend sort of new fathers sessions. I think all of those things will really help. And speak to your partner about your fears and your anxieties and stuff. I think it's really important to be aware of that.
Okay. And maybe sharing your tips also when the baby's here and how dads in general can be helpful, but also help themselves when the baby's already here. What can they do at
I think
home?
sometimes the emphasis is on mum to ensure they include dad. And not to exclude dad. And if dad is trying to, sort of help and get involved, not to criticise because maybe he hasn't done something the way that you want him to do them. So, get alongside him and show him, because it doesn't come naturally to all of us. So all of those things will make a huge difference. And in particular, the skin-to-skin contact. I'm a big advocate on skin-to-skin contact. So, so dads sort of have the baby sort of on their chest, so that both the baby and dad have that sort of naked skin-to-skin contact, and it helps that sort of bonding and attunement between the child and the father, which is really important. Yeah, and I think also just sort of another couple of tips really would be to sometimes the involvement from the midwife in getting the father involved is key in those early days. So even if the father might feel that they're not being involved, make sure that they are. You get involved as much as possible. Talk to the midwife about maybe the worries that you may have and thoughts and anxieties that you might have, or go along to your local children's centre or Sure Start centre. Lots of Sure Start centres and children's centres do father only and baby and father only sessions, which are lovely. And then you've got experts on hand where you can talk about, maybe issues and things that you're concerned about and worried about. So yeah, there's lots of help out there, but I think the difficulty is sometimes for dads, they need to be more proactive in finding it, but just don't be afraid to ask, because it is out there.
Okay, that's lovely, Sharon. Thank you so much.
You're
for your advice.
welcome.
Thank you. So after the break, we'll be meeting Mark Williams, who had to leave work to look after his wife who developed postnatal depression. But unfortunately, he ended up with the very same condition, and that even led him to feel very suicidal. And we'll also be hearing more from Dr. Audrey Tang. Welcome back to today's programme, everyone, where we've actually titled this topic, When Having a Baby is Frightening and Depressing, because it's not always a bed of roses, as you'll see from the first part of Mark Williams' interview. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thanks, Chrissy.
Thanks so much for coming on to speak about this very important subject. So first, take us back when you heard that your wife was pregnant. What were the kind of feelings you were going through?
Yeah, everything was planned. We had good jobs, a house, everything was planned. The pregnancy was fine, but obviously the labour was just terrible, if I'm honest. So after 22 hours labour, my wife was
22 hours.
Yeah, 22 hours labour. Doctors came in and said, your wife's got an emergency C-section. I honestly thought my wife was going to die and the baby was going to die. And it's the first time I actually ever had a panic attack in my life. I've never experienced any sort of panic attack.
And you had one there in the hospital?
Actually on the labour ward, yeah.
Wow. What was that like? What happened?
I didn't know what it was. I just, obviously my mother-in-law was there, and even think about it now, it was a traumatic experience for me at that time. Yeah. Because I felt helplessness. I honestly wanted to help my wife, and obviously I didn't know what was going on. So when I got 3 doctors coming in and explaining, I just didn't know what was going on, really. And
obviously it's your natural instinct to protect her and to look after her, and then when it's like you feel like, oh my God, I can't do anything, and it's my wife there that's in pain, and my baby.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, what I found, I just wanted to protect her at the time. And I honestly thought she was going to die, and obviously my baby at the time, so. Yeah.
So what happened after that? Obviously, they had the C-section that was successful.
Yeah.
How long were they both in hospital for?
Yeah, after 3
quick?
days, my wife went home, and instantly it was something wrong. She was very clingy, not the person I knew.
Clingy to who? To you?
She didn't want to leave me to leave her, and she felt I just knew there was something wrong, you know. So obviously that went into postnatal depression, what I know now. But you know, she went from a person that was outgoing to she couldn't get out of bed, to look after the baby then, obviously. And
so you just saw like a complete change in her. She
absolutely,
like that
personal. Yeah.
And she'd had no history of any mental health issues.
Nothing. No, I could tell in the eyes.
You hadn't either, had you?
Nothing.
Before?
No, nothing whatsoever. I didn't know what depression was. If I'm honest, I was one of the people who thought, you know, can anyone get depressed? You know, I was that sort of naive about mental health at that time. You know, because obviously in the field I was in a field at the time, motivation, all that stuff. So it was total shock, really. Total shock it was to me.
And what other things were happening with your wife at the time? What other symptoms did you see apart from her sort of being clingy, needy?
Yeah, she didn't think she was going to be a good mother. That was a big thing.
Okay.
You know, a woman who was actually used to manage, you know, a team, you know, 13 people. You know, she couldn't even open a bill, couldn't do the bills, concentration, everything was just playing a massive factor then. Obviously, the racing thoughts, you know, and you know, she just couldn't get out of bed. But in the 12 months, she was really good with my son, but she just felt that she couldn't be the mother she wanted to be. I think big expectation at the time.
Did she speak to you about everything, or did you just just notice things?
It came emergency then, and obviously it came to the point where my wife should have gone into a mother-baby unit. You know, she put, you know, but unfortunately it wasn't one there for us, and I wouldn't let her actually go on an acute ward, you know, with other, because I was I didn't know nothing. Like I said, it was a different world to me.
And were you still working at the time?
Well, I had to give up work then for 6 months then.
You gave up work?
So I looked after my wife and then the baby. Then obviously money worries were starting to come in, and then couldn't tell my friends, couldn't tell everyone. You know, my personality was starting to change myself.
Why couldn't you tell your friends?
Well, 2004, we know it is a stigma now, it's still today, it's a lot better than it was then. But postnatal depression, I feel like everyone should be a happy time, you know, got a baby, and I was, you know, it certainly didn't work out for us like that, you know.
So was it a case that you maybe everyone was expecting you to be happy, excited about the baby, so you kind of didn't want to actually say what was really going on?
Yeah, I think, like I say, when all the family comes in and they expect, you know, you've got to put a brave face on, you know, and I think with perinatal mental health, it's one of the worst because everyone expects you to be happy, you know, a new baby come along, and like I said, it was all planned, but I think it was just a case of like, just over, you know, I just didn't know what it was, to be honest with you. I didn't.
Did you speak to each other?
Yeah, well, I couldn't tell my wife how I was feeling myself, because obviously I didn't want it to affect her mental health any worse. So as the months went on, after about 5-6 months, I was starting to get the suicidal thoughts then.
Really?
Yeah, so the point where I was walking down a street in Cardiff, and obviously I didn't make a plan to kill myself, but it was a thought. I just wanted this agonising noise, and if a bus hit me, at least I won't have this agonising thoughts go from my mind, like, so.
Wow.
And it's a point.
Was it like, could you not see a future though? Could you not see like?
It was a case
that
like,
it could be a solution to what you were going through.
It was just months and months, medication change, you know, the support we had was great from wife, obviously, but it was every week, you know, when it was going to end, and that was the hardest part. Like, if I knew it was going to end in 6 months or 12 months, I could deal with it, but it was a case of it was rolling all the time. I had to get back into work. I couldn't get back into work properly. Like I said, the money worries was a big thing, and, you know, going into using a credit card. And then also my personality started changing then.
In what way?
I remember once punching a sofa and then obviously busting my hand there, you know, and my friends noticed the personality change, but I couldn't tell them how I was feeling. I couldn't tell them about what was going on in the household as well, because obviously my wife was, you know, severe postnatal depression.
Did your friends not try to sort of speak to you and say, look, Mark, you know, we've noticed that you're different, is everything okay?
No, I'll be honest, I didn't know nothing about mental health. I didn't realise until years later I was actually depressed, you know, because obviously, so if I didn't know, obviously, about mental health, surely they didn't expect to know, really, if I'm honest, like, you know. So, and from, it was just, that first 12 months especially was really hard time for us, you know.
What was your worst moment, would you say?
I think for myself, I remember my mother-in-law actually witnessing me rocking in the chair. You know, I just couldn't control myself, you know, at that time. I was just more concerned about my wife at the end of the day. I just wanted my wife to be well. And then obviously, like anything, it's your loved one who's going through this illness. And, you know, that's all I cared about was my wife, you know, to actually be well. So I was concerned about her, but obviously I couldn't see an end of it. Obviously, I couldn't see an end of this, of the illness, really.
Yeah. Okay, well then how did things change, Mark?
Well, I suffered, I wouldn't say changed at the time, I suffered for about 6 years really in silence, and it wasn't until another trauma happened in my life. Unfortunately, my mother had cancer, lost my grandfather, and then that affected my work, but then it resurfaced then, because I hadn't dealt with the problems before. It resurfaced this time, and I actually had a breakdown in 2011 then. I remember the day, 6 months prior to that, obviously my drinking, that was my coping skill really. To the breakdown, for the years I coped with drink, even going for the postnatal depression. That was my coping skill really, you know, to drink when people didn't know. My mother-in-law came to live with us, which I was an experience, if I'm honest.
Let's not go there.
Let's not go there. But like I said, I had a lot of family support as well, but you know, so there's a lot of family support. But like I said, in 2011 was when it came to the point where my body just shut down. I was in a car. This achiness, this anxiety, which I know now. I couldn't concentrate. My mind was constantly racing. I couldn't stop it. And it was a point when I just picked up a phone. I think, if I'm honest, if it was my son, who knows what happened, you know, because my suicidal thoughts were really, really bad at that point then, you know. It was a point that I never made a plan ever. But it was I just couldn't get these suicidal thoughts out of my mind, really, you know. Couldn't see any future.
So we'll watch the second part of Mark's interview a bit later on. But first, let's go to Audrey again. And she's explaining here why men don't tend to open up about what they're feeling when it comes to postnatal depression, and also what they can do to help themselves.
Recent research has shown that 1 in 5 men can be hit by depression following the birth of a baby. And of course, one of the reasons men don't open up is because they are supposed to be the strong one, the one who helps get through, hold the family together and so on. And this is not just true of men who suffer from postnatal depression, but any form of mental health issue. A company has recently found that actually changing the way or reframing the way that men look at mental health issues can actually help them seek help a lot more. So instead of a man going for a counselling appointment, they're going for a stress-related consultancy appointment. That's the phrasing that's now used in some places, which has had a real impact on men seeking help. Just that reframing of it to something a little bit more business-like. But men don't tend to open up, partly because they don't know who to open up to. That's one of the problems. But of course, the midwife who comes round, obstetricians, if you're visiting with your partners, your own GP, even talking to friends who may be able to point you in the right direction. I'm always very loath to say you must talk to friends and family. It is important, but probably this is a message for friends and family. Don't feel that you are the person who then has to help get the person through it. It's actually better to support them in getting professional help. The whole problem with mental health illnesses is that they take hold in a very dark and almost very cunning kind of way, and soon you're very sucked into it, and that can be quite dangerous for you as well. The best thing you can do is, if somebody does open up to you, go and bring them to seek help. But men, it's very important. You're not burdening your partner if you go and speak to somebody else, like a friend who then you can go and seek help with, your GP. Even now, there's also an internet site where you can put in your issues and what you're suffering from. It's based on the Man Manual that was very popular some time ago, where the men's health was looked at in the same form as a mechanic's Haynes manual. But men, it's important to talk about it, because you're not doing yourself and you're not doing your family any good by staying quiet. The whole problem about depression, as I said, it comes alongside stress and anxiety. It also comes alongside guilt. Stop feeling guilty. It's perfectly natural. It happens to 1 in 5 men, probably more. Those are the only ones that we've heard about. That's the whole problem with statistics in research. It's who's reported it or who's had it diagnosed. So stop feeling guilty about it. Go and seek help. some of the other very simple things you can do is try and get enough sleep. Of course, that's very difficult when you've got a newborn, but sleep is very important. Try and expose yourself to natural sunlight. Again, a lot easier in the summer than it is in the winter, but that's important too. Getting some fresh air, and it can even be as simple as going on a family walk together. It can do a lot to just change your environment, because our brains can actually get quite attached to the environment we're in. If we stay in the same place for a long time, our bodies respond to being in that particular place. So getting out, changing the scenery can help. That can make a real difference. But as I said before, please say something about it as well. That's important too.
So thanks very much again to Audrey, and after the break we'll be watching the second part of Mark's interview. Hi, I'm Chrissy B, and my show is all about improving your mental health and being happy. Join me every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 10 p.m. on my channel Sky 203. Visit chrissybshow.tv for more information and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Chrissy B Show. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chrissy B Show, and on our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show. Welcome back to The Chrissy B Show, and today we're talking about when actually having a baby isn't a joyous occasion, but it's very frightening and depressing. So we did watch the first part of Mark Williams' interview earlier. We're going to be watching the second part in just a moment. But first of all, as most of you know by now, eating healthily can really impact a person's mental health in a positive way. So before we continue speaking to Mark, here's a healthy and easy recipe with Danielle Shine.
Hi everybody. If you're someone who likes to snack in between your main meals, then it's wise to keep your foods real, filling and health supportive, like the recipe I'm going to show you how to make right now. My chocolate flaxseed crackers are filled with healthy fats and protein to keep you fuller for longer. They taste great with some nut butter or some chia seed jam, and they're pretty easy to make. So come and join me in the kitchen and let's get started.
Chocolate flaxseed crackers are easy to make and take with you wherever you go. They taste great and fill you up, not out. Perfect if you're mindful about making good food choices for your health. Mix raw chocolate powder, known as cacao powder, together with ground flaxseed for a good dose of omega-3 fatty acids and dietary fibre. Add raw granulated sugar, organic is best. Then mix everything together to combine really well. Make sure there are no lumps remaining. Sometimes it helps to mix these ingredients with a fork to help break up any clumps. Add fresh drinking water, which activates the ground flaxseed to become glutinous, helping to bind all of the ingredients together. Mix really well until you have a sticky, chocolatey, wet dough. At this stage, let the mix rest and thicken further by covering with a tea towel and leaving for at least 10 minutes. When ready, add a little more flaxseed to help transfer it from the bowl to a piece of baking paper. Because this mix is a little sticky and stubborn, place it between two pieces of baking paper and roll it out to a 1/4 inch thickness, which will take up the majority, if not all, of your baking paper. Score the dough with a knife so it's easy to break apart once baked. And create some breathing holes with a fork that will help the crackers to bake evenly. Transfer to a baking tray and place in a preheated oven until the crackers harden and darken in colour. This should take about 20 to 30 minutes depending upon your oven, so keep an eye on them. Remove and leave to cool before separating. Enjoy with nut butter, chia seed jam or savoury dips like hummus. Thanks for watching!
Thank you so much to Danielle. So now let's watch the second part of Mark's interview.
2011.
What stopped you from taking your life?
I think it was, I think my son, if I'm honest. My son, obviously, I never wanted to take my life, actually. It was just the suicidal thoughts.
Because you couldn't see another way at the time.
I couldn't see any way out. You know,
when you just see this dark hole and you just don't see any, or there is light there really, but you don't think there is any. It's the most terrifying feeling, I know, because I've been there.
Yeah.
And it's just awful. But then there is always hope.
Absolutely.
And that's what I want to say to the people watching. You might feel the way Mark is describing right now, but it can actually be just a temporary feeling. It is a temporary feeling, and there is always help. There is always hope. But, you know, unfortunately, some people don't see that, and that's why they end up thinking that, well, I'm not going to live like this anymore. It's not that they want to die. They just don't want to live the way they're living anymore.
Exactly, and it's just the agonising thoughts, you know. I just wanted to... I think when my body was starting to shut down then, obviously, what I know now was I was having a breakdown. Like, you know, I just couldn't see anything. Like I said, the trauma from my mother's illness, my grandfather losing in his space 6 weeks, you know, they resurfaced then from not getting the help prior to that before, and they resurfaced. But yeah, the good thing was I remember it came to the point where I was probably the lowest I'll ever be, and I didn't care what anyone thought. I think one of the things I was always worried what people thought, you know, is it going to affect my workplace, my work thing. And when you're at the lowest point, you just, it was just like, well, I just don't have anymore, you know, I can't get any lower than this. And that's when I phoned my local charity, which I found on the phone in the car.
Right. And what was that like for you actually finally reaching out to someone? Yeah,
well, I was told to go to the GP and put a medication in at that time. And then I just suddenly understood, because like I said, I didn't know anyone who actually experienced mental illness before. So it was totally new, you know, people got it, like for instance, for the first time. And that was the first time. I wish now what I knew then in the car, that I actually sought help 6 years before, because obviously what I know now is the best thing I ever done was actually getting out and getting the help.
Okay, and then how did you recover? Or are you still in the process of recovery?
Yeah, I was still obviously, you know, I was having more bad days and good days, and I gradually went with the medication started to help. And like I said, medication not for everyone. It worked for me, and like I said, it was a case that I was at counselling. I went for counselling CBT. I was doing the mindfulness coping skills then, and then as the weeks went on, I changed my job then as well. So I worked in a hospital then, and so I think the turning point then was when I actually talked to a gentleman in the gym then, and we were in the gym side by side, and I said, do you mind if I bother with weights? And he said, yeah, my wife, I got to go to NHS prams, which I found out the CPN nurse that helped my wife set up NHS prams for women with postnatal depression. And then I found out he actually had a breakdown, and he lost his business, a house, after looking after his wife as well. And I thought, how is this happening in 2011? So I Googled and I found out. And when I was talking to Brian, I never told anyone how I was really feeling. I connected with this gentleman side by side, and he was telling me things that he hadn't told other people as well. And it was the first time that...
he spoke to the right person,
yeah, first the right person. It was just by luck. And then I went on to set up Fathers Reaching Out then, which was just to support fathers with their partners or wives with postnatal depression. But
so you saw that there wasn't really much.
There was nothing there. Nothing there in 2011. And same as Brian, nobody asked me how is a father coping with, you know, because at the end of the day, like I said, these fathers are looking after their partners, you know, and some of these fathers got mental illnesses before actually, you know, becoming fatherhood. So it's a massive strain on the family as well. So
tell us more about the organisation then that you set up.
Yeah, well, like I said, at the end of 2011, I set up, and then from telling my story, my lived experiences, it just went mad. It did really, and then I was involved in obviously television, radio. I've been lucky to be on the Pride of Britain Awards, Inspiration Father Year, you know, Mind Media Awards and all this stuff. So from a negative time in my life, I've actually turned it into a positive now, and I've actually been asked to speak in Australia and New Zealand and all around. So I'm a public speaker now. I've got a book coming out now next year as well, which is under publisher now. So like I said, from a negative point, it's actually turned into positive, and that's what I think I want to get the message across. You know, all these people with so much lived experience, they've got so much experience to give into mental health as well. So
what does it feel like for you from coming from that very dark place to now being able to help others? Yeah,
I still obviously, you know, I've learned more about mental illness, and just by helping one person, you know, it's been one of the best things I can imagine.
We've
Like,
helped a lot more than one, haven't
Oh,
you?
yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic, and I think you know, fathers' mental health is it's not talked enough. Like, I'm trying to campaign now for the nice guidelines now as well, because they might get the father actually put on the nice guidelines. I've launched International Father's Mental Health Day, which is the day after Father's Day as well.
Amazing.
So that's next year going out, and also Dad's Hour, so on Twitter. So we're trying to get fathers actually engaging and talking, and like I said, a lot of fathers actually suffer from anxiety, postnatal depression. As is research, I was 1 in 10 actually, 1 in 10 at least. Because I think after 12 months, that's postnatal period, a lot of fathers using negative coping skills, you know, and like the bonding attachment with a father is such an important time. So if a father is unwell, obviously that's going to affect that, you know, the child's life as well. So such important.
Definitely. Mark, thank you so much for coming on to speak about this. I'm sure you've touched lots of people today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm so glad that Mark finally got the help that he needed. So now, before we go to a break, we have Audrey Tang with treatments available for postnatal depression.
As always, there's a whole host of treatments available. They fall under the category mainly of talking therapies or somatic treatments, so that's drug treatments. As I've always said before, and I'll say it again now, the whole thing with drug treatment is it only treats the symptoms. Now, if you need it in order to be able to function, in order to get help, then fine. But it's very easy to get addicted. It's very easy to become desensitized. So really use that with care. Too often I see somatic treatments being prescribed, and I am a bit concerned with that. But talking treatments, they all depend on the type of person you are and what you respond best to. They fall within the psychoanalytical school, where it might be that you talk about the root cause of depressive episodes. Cognitive behavioural, where they challenge the negative automatic thoughts. Depression is often a cycle of negative automatic thoughts that keep repeating and repeating. And with the behavioural therapy, you're taught techniques to try out. It might be thought stopping, that's a cognitive technique, and then a behavioural technique might be doing something nice and then rewarding yourself for it, or rewarding yourself when you can recognise a trigger for a depressive episode. There's humanistic treatments as well, Gestalt treatments. It depends on the type of person you are as to how well you respond to which particular type, but talking is a very good way of dealing with it, and sometimes maybe talking with your partner as well, so perhaps both of you going and talking about what's going on. However, I would also say get practical help too. Speaking to the midwife, speaking to the GP, they can give you practical tips for new mums. Go out, go and speak to other families. There's lots of mother and baby groups for different ages as well, so it gets you out of the house, gets you meeting new people. It makes you realise you're not alone. Fathers too, you can actually find a lot of support talking to people at work, and also try and do things as a family unit together too. So there's practical help that you can seek, but also of course professional medical attention too.
So thank you very much. Now, after the break, we'll be taking a look at a US support group where the mothers are very open about the kind of dark thoughts and feelings they battled with. And we also take a look back at an interview with Charlotte Antoniou, who felt so down after the birth of her baby that she actually started to self-harm. Welcome back to our program today, which has been all about when having a baby is not a fun occasion for some parents, both mums and dads, but can also be very depressing and frightening. So now it's time to take a look at a US support group where the mothers are very open about the kind of very dark thoughts and feelings that they battled with.
If this is depression, then why do I not feel sad all the time? There's still things that make me happy, but then I have these like panic attacks where my heart starts racing and it's palpitating and I'm jittery and I feel trapped and claustrophobic and like I can't get away. And I feel like I'm losing my mind. And all I want to do is leave my older one, just drop him off at the gas station and drive away. And pick up the baby and throw him in the pool. And just be done with it, walk away.
Hard feelings to have.
Those are the scariest feelings ever. When those feelings started coming, that's when I realized, oh crap, this is not okay.
Right.
I'm not okay.
Right. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of other people will hear you say something like that and think, oh my gosh, she's gonna go and, you know, harm herself or harm her children.
And you don't want to tell your spouse because then they'll think you're crazy, and you don't want to say that out loud to anybody else.
But that's exactly what we're trying to do, is get women to be able to be open and honest and talk about their feelings and their experiences so that they can reach out and get help. The role of a support group is everything. I think of all the interventions and all my years of doing this work, the support group has been most beneficial for women because it helps de-escalate that feeling of I'm alone. Knowing that every week you have a safe place to come and share feelings that not a lot of women are comfortable talking about. It's difficult emotion.
I remember with my first son just holding him and saying, this was not how it was supposed to go.
No.
And nobody told me that I would feel that way.
Right.
Nobody had said anything. The whole time we were in the hospital, I had a quiet, sleeping baby. I had nurses that helped me. My husband and my mother and my mother-in-law all took turns taking care of me. And then suddenly I was home alone. My husband went back to work. I had a crying baby. And I remember holding him and looking at him and saying, I just said, I was like, why did we decide to do this? It just screams at me and it hurts because I knew I loved him, but I didn't understand where that was coming from. And I knew that postpartum depression was a risk that people had, but I'd never been depressed. I didn't think I had an issue. I didn't think I had any reason to feel any different to my baby that everybody else does. I thought I was gonna put him in a stroller and walk him down the street and wear my pretty little clothes and do my little baby thing for a while, and it wasn't that way.
The myth a lot of times is this is gonna be the happiest time in your life, that you're gonna automatically attach and bond to your baby, that as soon as that baby comes out, there's gonna be this instant loving feeling, and sometimes that takes time to develop.
It started off with really bad insomnia.
And I was reading about Ambien, and I got to the point that said, if you take too much, it could be fatal. And that popped. It just like sucked into my brain. And it was just one word, suicide.
It was so clear that it was not a rational thought. And I think that that's what scared me so much.
I'd been trying to find a psychiatrist. I'd been trying to get more help, and it wasn't available. And I didn't know what to do. So I decided to check myself into a mental hospital, and it was Mother's Day. It was Mother's Day. It was my very, very first Mother's Day. And I was checking out of motherhood.
Most people refer to this as postpartum depression, but actually it's not always postpartum depression. We see a range of different mental health symptoms, including anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, manifesting within the postpartum period. So it's much more than just depression.
It was pretty bleak, you know, feeling like I didn't want to be here, or feeling like my husband and my baby would be better off without me around. It took totally hitting, you know, rock bottom. And I think we were both so completely overwhelmed that it's, you know, it's hard to pull somebody else up when you're drowning too. It's hard to rescue somebody else. Not just only depression and feeling like you're gonna cry constantly, to also very agitated and angry, you know, and having the depression manifests itself in that way, which I didn't even really realize depression could manifest itself in anger and irritation and just always being on edge. Yes. And I get these afternoon panic attacks, you know, and I feel like I'm just gonna implode or explode. It's just like it's been too much.
Or the thought of getting in your car and just driving. Yes. That was always my escape.
Yeah, I leave the kids.
Leave the kids.
I'm out of here.
I'm done.
While I think our media does a great job trying to highlight stories around pregnancy and postpartum mood disorders, very often it's a tragedy, which isn't always the case. They don't highlight the women who go through postpartum and get well.
Eventually, I started thinking that it was hopeless, that this was an awful situation and I didn't want to be in it anymore. Recognizing that I was approaching a severe level of postpartum depression. So I started looking into some counseling services and what was available. And then slowly adding psychiatry and some medications and some support groups and some self-care like massages and a pedicure and a day out without the children. Had I not done that, I don't think I would be in this position. I could have fought harder earlier on to keep it from happening, but couldn't because I felt so guilty that I didn't want to take care of my child. That stigma was so shameful and horrifying.
The role of stigma is unfortunately one of the biggest barriers to treatment. Women won't reach out and families won't reach out, so the stigma builds, which then prohibits people from saying, oh, well, maybe I need help and maybe help is available because you're not alone.
You know, as much as I love my friends, they didn't get it. But the support groups, they get it.
I think having the other women around you to help you ride that roller coaster.
You can just be real. It's like the one place in your life you can cut out the pretense and everything else, but to have that group every week to know that like we're all experiencing something maybe a little bit differently, but we can be open and honest, like that's pretty special.
The symptoms are all so different, but we all get that you might be feeling really anxious one day, you might be having some obsessive thoughts, you might be sleep deprived, and you might be overrun with just emotion of trying to balance life and work, and we all get it. We all understand that struggle.
Talking out loud with other mothers has been the most gratifying thing out of all of it.
Please reach out for help. That is the #1 thing that most people do, is they suffer in silence.
This is the #1 complication of childbirth. #1. But there are ways that you can help it. There's ways you can prevent it. There's ways you can treat it, and it's not forever.
So thank you very much to the Mental Health channel for that video. And if you'd like to know more about them, if you head over to our website, chrissybshow.tv, and click on the contributors tab, you'll be able to find a link and more information about them. So now it's time to look back at an interview with Charlotte Antonia, who also felt very down after the birth of her baby. Now, she didn't actually know what was going on and why she felt the way that she did, but there was a point where she actually started to bite herself.
Well, I had my children six years ago, my first daughter 6 years ago, and I've got a 4-year-old as well. And I had the happy hormone for 2 months when they were born. They were both born in October. Okay. So I had the happy hormone, all happy. I was, really ecstatic to have my baby. But come the winter months, I just really felt low. I felt like I was walking in fog through a muddy swamp, and I didn't quite feel that I was as joyful as other mums were, and didn't feel that I felt like I was putting on an act, really, and knew that I wasn't feeling quite right, but didn't know how I should feel because it was my first.
Now, did that happen sort of quite suddenly, or did you notice a gradual change in your mood and how you were feeling?
Within 2 months, really. So I had my first daughter in October, and by the January I was really feeling that something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. So I kind of tentatively would ask friends, how are you feeling? But no one would really be honest, because as a mum you kind of want to feel like you're doing everything and you're coping.
Did that make you feel worse, the fact that you'd spoken to people and they hadn't really...
A little bit. But also I was kind of quite hiding away myself, although I did the opposite and actually was out more. So I was signing up to all these baby groups and trying to get out and looking like I was the mum that was doing everything and coping, but really inside I wasn't.
It must have been hard to do that, like to sort of act something else, but be feeling the way you were feeling.
I think my husband picked up on it more because obviously he could knows me well and knows how I really was, but I still wasn't even as honest with him as I was feeling. So
okay. And then this happened again with your second child?
Yeah, with my second, again, born in October, they're born a week apart. So, yeah. And again, I felt the happy hormone kick in. I remember holding my 4-week-old baby and my sister-in-law saying, oh, you know, would you have another one? And I'd be like, yeah, straight away, I'd have one now. But actually, 4 weeks later, I was really feeling quite low. And I thought, because I'd got a 2-year-old who was quite challenging with the terrible twos, then I did actually think that maybe it's just her and it's not the baby, because I felt bonded with my baby. I didn't feel anything but love, but I also felt that I wasn't coping, and I also thought that it was because I've got 2, and it was only when I had time with my older one that I realised actually it's the logistics of 2, and I was hiding away more. I wasn't going to baby groups at all. I was making up excuses not to see my friends.
So complete opposite of the
the
first
complete opposite. And I resorted to self-harming. I was biting myself because I felt so frustrated that I didn't feel in control anymore at key times, so at bedtime, so if my husband wasn't around and I was doing bedtime on my own with them, just that whole pressure to do it and to get the babies to sleep was really hard. But I was in denial because I didn't even see myself as self-harming, so I was Googling biting yourself and it was coming up self-harm. I'm not doing that. I'm not self-harming, and so then I realised that I needed some help. So once I'd stopped denying it, and I actually spoke to my husband because even he didn't know, then I thought I do need some help.
Wow. Was that when you came across pandas?
The pandas, there's a little bit online at the time, and I was able to seek support online because I'd used Facebook as a mask. With my first, I didn't have Facebook. With my second, I was on Facebook, and it was all, this is all happy, this is us having a happy time, but actually
I'm so glad you're saying all this, Charlotte, because I can imagine how many mums are doing the same thing, and like, I think it's expected, isn't it, Donna, as well, of like,
very much
you know,
so.
you've had a new baby, it's all exciting, people are excited for you, so you kind of feel like you need to post things up and just put on this
People
thing
say,
that everyone...
you must be so excited, and they can't be honest and open, and it's hard.
I'm really glad you're talking about all this because you know you're just hitting it right on the head for me today.
So some mums go through the opposite, that they can't deal with any social media, so they come off Facebook completely and look like they're dropping off the face of the earth. But then I was the opposite. I was fully embracing everything, because part of my paranoid feelings with postnatal depression was that I felt out of the loop. So friends would say, oh, we're meeting up, oh, you didn't see that text, or you didn't see that message. So I then got more paranoid and more thinking that my friends weren't including me, and I wasn't liked by them, and really the complete opposite, because they were really worried. And I made contact with a local charity in a different area, because I'm in London, so I live right close to a border. And it was only when I Googled the postnatal depression with the name of the border that we on Hertfordshire, I came up with another charity that offered some support groups.
So there you go. I think it was really brave of all our guests, and from the videos that we saw as well, for these people to open up and talk about what they went through, because some of it was very hard to admit to, and especially the ones where the people were having the mums were having those dark thoughts about their children. And to be honest, we all get those kind of thoughts sometimes where you say to yourself, now where did that come from? And I went through it, and you do end up feeling really badly about yourself and ashamed, and you start to feel guilty for thinking that way. But what I learned to do was to recognize those thoughts as foreign. So I saw them as external things that weren't a part of me, as though it was someone else whispering those thoughts into my mind and trying to make me think that those thoughts were who I was. So as soon as I had a dark thought, I would just say, look, I've identified you, now get out. So you just have to kind of maybe just imagine like a little devil like sitting on your shoulder and kind of whispering in your ear, and just flick the thing off. That's it. And don't dwell and start overthinking about the thoughts that you're having. Don't let it take over your mind, because when it does, that's when you start to feel all those horrible emotions and the guilt and the fear. And also, if you see it's the kind of thoughts where you maybe want to harm someone, and that's the stage where you actually need to go and ask for help. Go and talk to someone, especially if it's to do with children, because as you saw, those mums, they loved their children, but they were so depressed and they didn't know what was going on, that they were having bad thoughts about their kids. But you saw when they opened up, they saw that, I won't say it's normal, but they saw that this was actually a mental health issue. Then they were able to deal with that and get the help for that. So whatever it is, just make sure, if you are struggling with something, make sure you get the help that you need and speak to whoever you need to speak to solve the problem. Well, we have reached the end of today's program, guys, but if you have a story that you would like to share to help motivate and inspire others, or if there's something that you're still going through and you'd like our help on this show, you can visit our website, chrissybshow.tv. You can also tweet us at Chrissy B Show or leave a message on our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show. And if you want to know more about me and the mental health issues that I had in the past that I kicked out of my life, you can visit mylifeafterdepression.com. Until next time, bye for now. These are just some of the dark thoughts and events that have happened to real people. Sorry.
Good. Yeah.
You alright there, George?
Yeah.
Come on.
Just a gym.
You're supposed to be training, aren't you?
I actually took this as a compliment that I'm not that heavy.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Yeah, that's very good. You must have lost some weight.
This is a good sign.
See what's going on. It's that annoying fly. I think you killed it.
Oh, no way. No. Oh, sorry, this has gone off now.
No, it's still here. Sorry, it's really annoying. It's been flapping around us like the whole...
Future.
And then...
Sorry.
Sorry, one sec. I need to blow my nose in it.
It's a fly just hanging around me.
Tell us about the organisation. What was that?